Good evening, class. So, my name is Nicky,
I'm Rachel.
and today we're going to be learning about women's rights in the 1860s. So, before we dive into the entire lesson plan, let's look at this cartoon for the next minute. Just think about what do you see and what do you think it represents. So this cartoon says a government of the people, by the people, for the people.
Does that say unenfranchised?
Yeah, this one just says unenfranchised, and if you can't read down here, it just says, are not the women half the nation? Just take a minute to look at that and think about what it means.
What does her little sash say?
Unenfranchised.
Okay.
So for the next minute, just think about what you see and what do you think it represents.
Is everyone ready to discuss, or do we need a little bit more time? We're good?
So based on this image, what do we see?
Oh, are we just going off of strictly what we see?
Yeah. Or you could either say what you see, what you think it represents, either one.
Oh, okay. I was gonna go with what it represents. Well, what it makes me think of. It makes me think of Abigail Adams when she like tells her husband like, "Don't forget the ladies." So that's what it kind of makes me think of, like the Uncle Sam standing on the side is like looking like, I don't know about you guys, but they're like, bro, we're part of the people. That's what it is.
Yeah, that was a good response. Anyone else? Is this negative or positive? Like, do we think this is something that's
I kind of think that Lady Liberty is like shaming Uncle Sam there. So it's just talking about how we're not living up to the ideals that the country is founded on.
Yeah, definitely. That's a really good response.
Yeah, I
Good
mean,
interpretation.
it looks like she's sort of like scolding him, like, look who's right here, like, you're not paying any attention to her, like, she should be involved in some ways, yeah.
Yes, Alice?
I think it's very interesting that she has handcuffs on, like, but she's very oppressed or like potentially like a slave. Since it's the 1860s, they might like be shackled down and not able to like do anything or have any freedom.
And he's kind of standing there looking at her like, what? What do you have to say? What do you want?
Kind of.
Hurry up, but you know.
Is there anything you notice with his arms? Does it seem like he's kind of like listening in a good way, or is he kind of like
I don't see it in a positive way.
not in a positive way?
I don't.
Yeah, I mean, his body language makes him seem very, like, closed off to her, not really caring about what she's representing or what she has to say about it.
Any last thoughts? Or it seems like we're all in agreement that this is a negative image. So as you guys said, you know, it is showing that women are oppressed in the United States because, as Allison said, you know, this woman is in shackles. And then how is the government for the people, but does not represent half of the country's population. So, half of the population regarding males, they're given their freedoms, but women aren't. And, during the time, were women able to vote? No. Who wants to read today's objective for us? Jason, can you read this for us?
Students will be able to analyze Elizabeth Cady Stanton's The Destructive Male in order to discuss the disenfranchisement of women in the United States.
Yes, good job, Jason.
Thank you, Jason.
So what you have in front of you is a copy of an adapted version of Elizabeth Cady Stanton's speech that was titled The Destructive Male. So this speech was given in the 1860s and is all about what that image that we just looked at represents. So we're going to be diving into the disenfranchisement of women and what women wanted to do about that today. So we are going to be analyzing this speech in Havruta style. So that means you'll be partnered up, obviously just with who you're sitting with right now is perfectly fine. You're gonna read the speech just on and off, make sure both people are reading. If you would prefer to read it by yourselves and then come together, whatever y'all are more comfortable with is perfectly fine with us. Just once you get to like a section of questions, talk about it, write your answers down, just think about what that means in relation to what you just read.
So if I were to read it as a partner, I would begin with paragraph 1, in which is starting on the top. So I would read, I urge a 16th Amendment because manhood suffrage or man's government is civil, religious, and social disorganization. And then I will continue where it finishes at the bottom. And all hearts have been dead alike to love and hope. And after reading that, I'm going to let my partner Rachel continue the second paragraph.
Yeah, so I would read the second paragraph until has undertaken the absolute control of all matters, and then we would discuss the questions right there at the bottom together before moving on with the reading. Does anyone have any questions about how this is going to go for y'all? Cool, so we're gonna give about 15 minutes to read this and discuss it. If we need more time or less time, that's perfectly fine. But that's just sort of a baseline for y'all to go off of. So y'all can go ahead and start reading now.
Why do you think it's entitled The Destructive Male?
That's really good. It makes me think of what I'm reading the destructive male. It's like expressing that the male presence is like inhibited. Like,
I think they're definitely wrong.
yeah.
Yeah. I think also the reason it's entitled that is it's supposed to grab attention, specifically men's attention. So it's to be really insidious. I think that's why it's titled that.
Yeah, and definitely think about like how the whole speech, not just the title, sort of plays into like what the audience is that like what they'll think about what she's saying, because that's sort of like a really big important part of the speech.
I like the word carnival because they are like they riot and they are also like funny because they're sort of
Well, I think it does, I don't know, I'm done.
Oh, they're not.
No, I'm kidding, I'm
Okay.
fucking wrong.
Oh,
Shit,
ooh.
I use the language.
Goodness gracious.
Oh, no, I'm on camera.
People object to the demands of those who refuse to overcome our. What?
And the very last one is that man has, undertaken the absolute control of all matters.
I think it's interesting too that
I
the
don't
last
know.
line says that man
What
would
if?
have a complete
Mhm.
being too.
Yeah.
And that's interesting range. Like space of him and even though they're overtaking everything, they're still working at half capacity while they're getting more than from acting at full
There are a
capacity.
lot of, this is stuff that people actually still believe in 2023.
So we kind of just covered the second question.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I'm just remembering some of those spots.
Oh, just go back.
I just remember the times there.
And that makes me think too, like historically, like who created the society, men, so like who made it unreflective of the thoughts
Right,
of women,
right.
men. So. People object to the demands of those who choose to call it stronger because they say the brave is something to make the women masculine. That is just the difficulty in which we are involved in. The strong and key characteristics of womanhood are less in my independence. To keep a proponent society, woman must be individual with man's reflective ideas, opinions, virtues, motives, prejudices, and biases. She must
I have a
respect the
question.
perceptions those in straightforward
They are
and
angry
free
and they feel like the men that happens with men, they make a sad little version and they feel repressed and says they have to exalt purity and not to boost men's egos, which takes away so much of their own personal.
That's the, and that was that sections on boundaries of the law, like, the need of this hour is not territory, gold mine, or railroads, but a year evangel of womanhood, to result purity, morality, to and others, the higher ones with opportunity.
So what are some effects expression of that? Well, one thing in the part that I read, the last one says that they strip, like the current state of society strips women of like their every inalienable right.
And it talks about men molding women into their ideals, to his own ideals.
I love statement speeches. I was like, when I think of that, I think they're so interesting and they're so like purposeful. Because women,
I love the feelings in most cases they want the characteristics between men and herself that needed reflection.
On that social justice.
I also feel like that kind of speaks to the like pointing out and I don't know, like trying to say, yes, like we want women to be able to be their full selves in society, but we're not saying that like it needs to be like a female led society, like we both have characteristics that need to like kind of inner work with each other. And by the fact of it being like this solely male dominated, that's even throwing the women out of whack too, like where it's saying like now women are displaying characteristics that need reflection. It just kind of, it makes me think of, I just kind of like that inequity is like hurting everybody. could be a better
Who do
society
you
if
think
everyone takes towards
Yeah,
doing
yeah.
that's better. The benefits.
Mostly women or mostly men?
Mostly women.
I don't know, it's kind of both, but I think that she wanted support from everybody, but we were doing.
If I was doing a controversial speech in the 1860s, I would try to start a riot.
Well, I don't know if that would work. I just said that I would write it, I would try to make it beneficial for everybody, because you have to play to the man's ego and say, oh yeah, well, if this happens, then like, it'll be really good for you, and then you can kind of like get what you want in the end, but also like play to their idiocy.
Do you think that this speech was playing to their idiocy or sort of playing to their side at all? Or do you think it was more one-sided?
I think it was a little bit more one-sided. She kind of roasted them quite a bit.
Yeah, I think she definitely did sort of go more towards like trying to get the women on her side, but at some points she did mention like that both sides are needed, and sort of that too much of one side, no matter which one it is, can be dangerous for society as a whole.
Oh, I'm so sorry, Nicky. It's not your lesson that caused that yawn.
Oh man. And it's been a long day, right?
It has been a long several months.
Usually when we make a speech during this time, that's why everyone's movement, required so much and like fight and during the time.
Do you feel like we're in like an agreement with Allison? What was
Yeah, I think so. Although I actually think that the speech is more aimed towards
Yeah, no, I'm saying.
convincing men as well. I don't
Right,
think
their
it's,
pulpit and saying.
I
we're
think it's more
speaking,
balanced
you're not
than
gonna let us.
leaning one way or the other. I think it's like designed
It
to
like feels weird to say it, well, not really, but.
roast men in a way that gets them to self-reflect.
I don't know if they had a whole lot of self-reflection back then. That's my only
Then they reacted to it with
thing.
I mean,
They barely have any
True.
now, so.
When
True.
women bring up concerns around like their place in
I mean,
society, like.
there's a lot to
treated
think
in
about
society,
because
or
it's like,
definitely
you know, like what Allison
people,
said,
like,
would they even give it
don't
time
have
of
to
day?
involve
Of like,
them.
oh, a woman wrote this, why even read it? You know, because, you know, they, during the time, they, you know, men
It's not a problem anymore.
did feel
Haven't
like-
you ever read something because it pissed you off though?
No.
Really?
I mean,
Dude,
okay, well, yeah.
most of the big social media
Yeah.
accounts, they're designed around that. Like they get,
they have a headline that hits your eye.
I've definitely
I
read
sleep with
something
a
because
machete next to my pillow.
under
Yes,
my
okay.
pillow.
Whatever.
Yeah, and I mean, I think this title,
He sleeps with a sword.
this title, like, definitely would have gotten the
Wait,
attention
did
of
he
some men.
actually?
Yes!
He did say that. He did say that.
Dude, okay,
What
I have
an
to tell you,
insane
so, during the height of it, there's this one podcast that would talk about it and play a lot of his like weird videos. One of them was that he only drinks sparkling water. If you drink still water, you're gay apparently, or a woman. And then if you don't sleep with a machete by your bed,
It definitely, yeah.
then you are
Well,
weak.
by default, politicians.
You said Andrew Tate said that?
Yes, he said
Mm.
that.
Oh my god.
Along with giving a whole introductory course on how to sex traffic women.
Right.
Yeah,
And
he's,
like,
and manipulate domestic violence.
Well, she's just, I think she's fighting
he's in
for
trouble
she's,
for
like,
that.
talking about.
The whole sex trafficking, but
A little bit, yes.
yeah, he's in house.
As much trouble you can be in when you're in cahoots with the Romanian mob.
right.
Yeah.
Politicians by
So,
default because I feel like she's
but did
talking
you
to the men of
read
society.
about him because of the
They
headlines, or
politicians,
did
so,
you
like,
just hear?
So
all,
I
like, high
watch a podcast,
amounts for, like,
Oh.
all men
and
in general,
the
too,
person
because
and the people on the podcast
the
talk
women
about
are
a lot of
fighting with this.
social justice
They
and
feel
stuff
the
that's
same
going
way
on in
they feel
social
the
media.
women in society.
And Andrew also specifically called out
They're, like, saying this
the person on the podcast, and so of course he was like,
Yeah.
he had to make fun of it.
Right. And I mean, a lot of people probably only know about Andrew Tate because of the like inflammatory things that he
Well,
said.
and also because he has this whole, this is what I did my social justice analysis on, which I apparently didn't do well on, but whatever. But okay.
I don't think it's just yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what
So,
I would say, like,
Discuss
probably,
it a different
like,
I,
at a, like a.
in my research, like I knew a lot about it
Because I feel
first
like a lot of
because
times
of
these Facebook
the
were at,
person
like,
that I
political
watched,
conventions,
but
because that's
there's
where all the men were
also,
meeting at one
he
time,
has
all the politicians and
hundreds
women as
upon
well.
hundreds
So, like, you
of
could
children
just talk over
Yeah,
to them.
middle schoolers.
posting, middle schoolers, high schoolers, regurgitating stuff on social media. He's banned from every social media platform, but they're out there reposting their stuff and like,
Downloading, re-uploading. So, even though
they're
this,
getting paid.
No, it's almost. Do you guys?
even though this is not like a specific question, but would you say like if you were living there during,
Okay.
during the 1860s and you saw this title,
Giving a speech over
you would definitely read this?
I'd be
Oh,
like,
I
oh
would,
yeah.
yeah.
You
This sounds really, really
Yeah,
interesting.
This sounds inflammatory, I'm all about it.
This sounds like it might piss some people off.
Very impactful. No, definitely, and I also think the structure.
I feel bad that I did
would
not
be
print my
very impactful used today too, like the way she started, it was like starting with like the most astonishing things.
Hey guys, we have less than 5 seconds. Does anyone need an extra minute or two to work on this?
No.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
Okay, cause I mean, we could give some extra minutes if we're still discussing. I wasn't trying to cut off your conversation or anybody's conversation.
Cool.
Okay.
That's it.
Okay. What were some of your just like initial like baseline thoughts like as you were reading? What did you think about this speech as a whole?
Fiery.
It is fiery. There are a lot of.
She was roasting them over the fire.
It was definitely inflammatory. Do you think she was using this speech to sort of get at the men, or like in a way of? Do you think she was using this speech to sort of target men into listening to her, or in a way to more towards women?
Jason and I talked about how it could potentially be both, but I think that, especially back in the 1860s, a lot of men were like, women speak? What? So I think it would have been a little bit shocking for them to read something like that, so they might not be on board at least right away. So it might take a second for them to be like, oh, I guess she kind of makes sense.
What did you guys think?
We said like a similar thing, but we focused a little bit more on like using kind of the inflammatory like setup and that structure to like catch the attention of men first and foremost. So that's what
Yeah, I mean, I think just even looking at like the title of the speech as a whole, like the destructive male, I think sort of like in our discussion with your guys' primary source before, like that might catch people's attention and be like, I can't believe they're saying this, like what actually is she saying, like blah blah, or men might just be like, oh, like whatever, like she's just a woman. So certain men might have responded differently to the way she was speaking, just based on personality and preference and that sort of thing.
It seems like I'm just gonna ask this as a whole group question, but like if you were alive during the 1860s, would you have read this piece?
Yes.
You would have been like, I gotta read this,
Yes.
regardless of
Yes.
if my husband or my.
Yes.
Okay.
Because I don't really care
Yeah.
about men. In that kind of, like, I don't care about their opinion. I care about people, but like, I don't really care about what my, like, I'm gonna do what I wanna do, and if my significant other is like, no, I'm gonna be like, okay, you're not my significant other anymore.
Do
You can't really tell me to not read something, especially.
Do you think that women in the 1860s would have had that same train of thought as you? Or?
Probably not.
The attitudes were different.
Mhm.
Yeah.
How so?
Women were convinced that their place was their place and they should be seen and not heard.
I feel like too, it's like the same thing with any like outspoken figure, like within reason, as long as they're like respectful, but like any like super outspoken figure, people are usually like taken aback a little bit when someone's like so forward about their opinions, because you're like, whoa, like you're just like putting it all out there. So I feel like that could be kind of a similar thing, that women are seeing that and maybe they do agree that they feel those ways about the current state of society, but it like scares them to kind of get behind someone who is like so aggressive about it. They might think like, like maybe that's not who I should get behind, or maybe it's not like as big of a deal as like she's saying it, like shouting from the rooftops. I don't know.
Right. So if most, like, I agree with you, like most people probably would think like that. So if that was the common like thought process of the time, why do you think Stanton wrote the speech in this way? Why do you think she gave it in such an inflammatory way then?
Well, I think that it's kind of rage bait, just like exists today. You know, a lot of engagement is driven not by things that you agree with or things that you like, but by things that you see and it makes you upset, so you engage with it. I think that was probably her idea.
I also think like she did already have people like behind her with this. Like it wasn't like this was just her first speech that she ever made. So I think that also like gives her the support to do something like this, because she may have been thinking like, one, obviously very passionate about what she's saying, but then two, like if she already has these women that are sticking behind her on this, she may say, well, just a numbers game, there's other women that have to think like this and be willing to take the risk that these women standing next to me are. So like I want to be able to like find those women, and like this is a way to do that too.
And just one sort of like final thing of discussion. I just want to talk a little bit about your answers to number 6. So that just says, if you were giving a speech on a controversial issue like women's suffrage in the 1860s, how would you structure it to make the biggest impact?
And you could say, like, you could think about, I like how the way she handled the speech. Or some people might say, I don't like how she handled it, she should have taken a different approach. So there's not, like, as we know, with opinions, there could be multiple different perspectives.
I don't even know so much that it's even the structure. When we're talking about now and then, I mean, this is a different time period. So this was the way they did it, and now we have social media, and we have this, and we have that, and our message can be conveyed in so many different ways with much louder and, much more, with a much more powerful impact, I guess.
Right.
But I do think, like, I think it's really powerful the way that she, like, what she chose to start with and, like, where she chose to go with that, rather than starting out with something kind of like a more stereotypical introduction, kind of like working into it. She literally, the second line is like, the male element is destructive, stern, like, really just kind of like ripping the Band-Aid off, which I feel like one plays into what Jason was saying about the rage bait, is because that gets people's ears. They're like, whoa, like she's making some bold claims, but I also feel like people are more inclined to listen to you if you're confident about what you're saying, and for her to come out of the gate like that, I feel like that is more likely to not only get women's attention that maybe feel the same way but are kind of like teetering on the fence, and then obviously men saying like, okay, women don't normally talk in public anyway, but then for a woman to come out and like clearly show that she's passionate, she's confident, like maybe this is something we should be worried about, and we should pay attention to what she's doing.
Yeah, so I think we have kind of really summarized what this speech was saying up nicely and the way it was delivered. So now it's just time for our sort of like final reflection and sort of final piece to this whole lesson. So what we are sort of like giving you like a piece to be in charge of now is you're going to write your own speech as if you were in the 1860s. Just who you are today, but imagine you're in the 1860s. How would you write a speech on women's suffrage and women's rights? So think about the type of language that you would use. Think about who you would be giving this speech to. Would it be like a male-dominated audience, other women? And how you can get your point across in as few words as possible. So just on that index card, just a couple sentences to get your point across. Just write how you would do so.
So you guys think this next 3 to 4 minutes, let's see, write up a speech.
Are we gonna be giving these
No, you're not
speeches
going to be
in
giving
class?
them. Just writing them. We don't have time.
But these will be graded. Just kidding.
She's gonna give him a heart attack. Jesus.
I'm sorry. Did
None
not
of this
mean-
is gonna be graded, Jason.
Okay, I'm sorry.
This is taking me back to when I played Abraham Lincoln in 4th grade. I was dressed as him and I gave a speech. Word and everything.
That's amazing.
So if any of you guys do finish early, you can just let us know, raise your hand, and we'll collect it.
Are you actually?
We are gonna collect it at the end.
Why?
Please don't.
Yeah, why?
We'll give them that.
Oh,
So,
I just signed up
okay.
for that.
For next semester, does anybody have to take that literacy class? In
Yes,
your
we all
content
do.
area?
Yes, we all do.
Okay, it's not showing up that it's gonna be like next semester.
Well, that's because it'll show up 2 days before.
Right,
She did it there.
Oh, did you enroll in it?
No. I was just looking.
They wait till the last.
Normally, yeah.
Well, especially because they put all of this together, so.
Are you taking 3 courses
I
this
just
semester?
finished my 4th grade.
Are you taking?
It's okay. Are you good?
I'm still so angry about that. They should not have, we were asked to
Did y'all
take 2.
finish? It's okay.
Well, I mean, they,
My advisor told me you take 2 in the fall and 2 in the spring.
well, I'm taking his spring.
Yeah, so am I,
Oh,
but I'm taking 3 right now.
yes, yeah.
It's a
we're-
full-time
Yeah,
schedule right
we're
now.
full-time students.
Yeah.
yes.
They should have offered that, they should have offered humanities either this summer or mini-master or something as opposed to.
Yes, because
Yeah.
there's, you can't not do the research class when you're not
Right,
in internship if they want you to.
that was
project,
supposed to
so-
be the class that was supposed to marry up with the internship.
Mhm.
Just take like 2 more minutes to keep working on your speech.
Come on, Jason.
Will you be slaves?
You said we're not.
Okay.
Or will you throw off the chains of oppression? Death to
Yes,
bad.
May I use the restroom?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Death
Just
to
make sure you
sexism.
sign out.
Death to all
Death to
men.
gender roles.
There is no gender.
That's what I said. I said, well, I didn't say that exactly, but my first line was that if society continues the way it is, there would be no women left on the earth. And men will have to do all the womanly duties. I mean, think
You're
about
making
it.
your point across.
Today
They would be like, oh my gosh, I don't wanna do that. I hate that speech.
Pretty good.
Yeah, okay.
Did Adam
I
say
just gave
finish?
ideas.
I don't know, I also want to use the bathroom though.
All right, well, that's it. So, thank you so much for participating in our lesson. Thank you.
Thank you again, guys.